Hey there, this is Leisa Peterson. Really pleased to be sharing this conversation with Gabrielle Pellicci. In just a moment, we'll get started. But I'm recording this after the conversation because I wanted to share that towards the end of our call, I was sitting outside doing the conversation here in Sedona, and a bird had come across a mirror that we had left outside, and the bird was thinking that the mirror was another bird. And it was communicating throughout, I'd say, the last several minutes of the conversation, running around the mirror, talking to itself, fluffing its feathers. And it was so beautiful. But I was watching it as Gabrielle was speaking, and I didn't think to even mention it. So you'll have to listen for the bird. It was a very auspicious sign, and I really hope you enjoy this interview. Hello and welcome to the Art of Mindful Wealth podcast. I'm so very happy you're here. This is Leisa Peterson, and I'm excited to be introducing you to my guest today, Dr. Gabby, Gabrielle Pellicci. Welcome, Gabby.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about this conversation because I know that we're going to really be focused on the women listening to this podcast and how we can help them, because we were just talking about the importance of being seen and getting ourselves out there and networking. And I know that this conversation is going to be very powerful as a result. But you reached out to me. I think it's actually been a few years ago when we had our first conversation. I know. Just getting started, and I don't even know how you found me, but you did. And it was so cool because as I think about all the things and I, read your bio, you have this very similar background. Of course, we've gone very different paths, but you've studied, Buddhist philosophy all the way to neuroscience and health and wellness, and even got a PhD in transformational education. And I'm sure you'll talk more about that. But I love this conversion because I come at the world from the perspective of money being the hook. And I think you come at the perspective of wellness. And I'd love it if you could tell people more about how you got into doing what you're doing and just give us some juicy stuff that we can understand you better. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So first, I want to say thank you so much. I've just loved our relationship and the way that it's grown over the last couple of years. I found you because I was doing some consulting work at this startup in New York. And the guy that I was working for wanted us to talk about money and wanted us to create some educational stuff around money. And I found you and I reached out to you and you were so generous. Like, you just talked to me right away. And every time I reach out to you, you always respond immediately. And it's just so refreshing and really great that, we've never met in person, but we have this ongoing relationship. So I just want to say right off the bat how much I appreciate that. My work has taken on many different forms over the years. It started out, we were talking before the call, when I was a young person, I was doing beauty pageants and modeling and stuff like that, and moved to New York to pursue a career in fashion and dance and art and all of these things, and found out pretty quickly that it was more brutal than I anticipated. It was a bit more cutthroat than I was prepared for, and kind of went scurrying back home again after a few years and enrolled in a psychology program. And that's also where I started doing my own self-work for the first time. I started working with a psychologist and learning about emotional intelligence, learning about the mind, learning about self-care. I worked with her for a couple of years while I was doing my undergrad degree. And then I was introduced to holistic healing therapies from one of my professors. I fell in love with massage and reflexology and energy medicine, and I started studying and practicing those modalities, and that's what I used as a way to make a living throughout graduate school. So I was doing massages and teaching yoga and stuff while I was in graduate school, and ultimately decided that I wanted to write my doctoral dissertation about alternative healing. So I interviewed women healers who were practicing all different kinds of medicine. There's actually many, many kinds of medicine. Sometimes here in the States, we think like medicine is just what we have, at the hospitals, but actually there's medicine that's thousands of years old that comes from Asia and India and South America, and there's all this beautiful indigenous medicine, and so I wanted to learn everything I could about all the medicines in the world, and so I was interviewing women about that. And that's what I wrote my research about and then started teaching. So the last 10 years I've been teaching holistic health and mind-body medicine, and recently got into the whole realm and the whole world of entrepreneurs, wellpreneurs, female entrepreneurs, because as my students were graduating and leaving the academic programs, they were coming out into the world and they were really struggling with how to make their career come together, how to get clients, how to get jobs, how to do the things we're going to talk about today, being seen, getting out there. And so I decided to create a community for them. And so that's what I've been doing the last few years, is this women in wellness community, which is a community of, female entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space specifically. And I love all of the things that you do on the art of mindful wealth, because all of these things are super relevant to healers who often struggle with their relationship to money, because when we're grounded in the healing arts, we often come from a place of service, and then adding money to that can be really challenging. So I see there's just really great synergy between your community and my community.
Definitely agree with that. And I think there's so many different ways that we can come at, like, I think you and I are saying there's alternatives to the way medicine has been dealt with, for example, or there's alternatives to the way that money has been dealt with. And in most cases, I don't know about you, but I feel like, we're breaking new ground. We're causing people to think about things in a new way that can be very uncomfortable. And like, wait a minute, especially I'm thinking of with wellness, it's like someone gets a cancer diagnosis and there's so many different paths that one can take, the traditional medicine model, or they can go out and do alternative, or they can find this kind of blend of the two. And it's the same thing with money that I think I'm trying to incorporate. It's like there's lots of different paths, but at the end of the day, most important of all is empowerment. Like, it's the education and in the outer world, and also this intuitive guidance that so many people have not been taught how to use when it comes to money or when it comes to their body. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. So we have a saying in the holistic health community, which is all healing is self-healing. And that's a huge mind shift that can be very uncomfortable because we're raised thinking that the power of healing lies in a practitioner who's outside of us, just like we may think that, the power of money is something that's external. But, when you get to the point where you realize how much of the internal affects the external and how much power that you actually have inside of you, it's a totally different game. It's a totally different approach to everything, your health, wellness, wealth, life, all of it.
So I'm going to be a little bit controversial, perhaps maybe not to you, but maybe to listeners. And this comes up a lot in the work that I do one-on-one with my coaching clients. And that is, most often, actually, I'm going to step back for a second and say several years ago, right after I started, I did a talk to a group of coaches. And in the group, there was a doctor who had retired, but he was in his 80s. And he reached out to me after the talk and he said, I want you to know that I practiced, medicine for, 50 years or more. And I was very clear that when people walked in the office, many times the illness that they were expressing was directly related to money. And it was like they were carrying the trauma of the money experience in their body, in their tissues, in their disease. And he's like, it took me a long time to realize it, but I do touch on that in my talk sometimes, and I must have, something sparked in him, and he wanted to reach out and say, there's no question in my mind that the money trauma and the money stress and the money shame is causing disease. And I'm curious of what you think, because this goes into the idea that everything is a creation, that we create, not purposefully, but subconsciously, we are creating the challenges that we deal with in our body, and period. That's right. Where they come from. But that's so hard for most people to really get their arms around, because then you go into blame, and that's not helpful, right? But I'd love it if you could talk to us a little more about that.
Yeah, this is a really powerful topic, and I'm glad you mentioned the thing with blame, because some practitioners that aren't really educated around this will try to teach this to somebody, and then the person who is suffering with the illness, or let's say with a case of money, it's dead or something like that, then they start to do this really harmful kind of self-criticism about this is my fault and I did something wrong and I'm causing this. And that's not what everything is a creation means. What it means is that what happens inside of us shows up outside of us. And that might be in a physical symptom, that might be in a relationship conflict, that might be in spending too much money, whatever it is. But whatever's happening inside us, if it's like a deep need for validation, if it's a stress, like you said, stress and trauma, it doesn't matter what the content of stress and trauma is. If you're stressed about anything, then you're going to overactivate your sympathetic nervous system. You're going to drain your adrenals. You're going to compromise your immune system. The body breaks down. So, whatever that stressful input is, whether that's coming from thoughts inside of us, like, I suck, I'm not good at anything, or I'm never going to be successful, or it's something outside of us, like someone saying that to us, regardless, the body has a similar response and the outcome is similar. So the most important thing with all of this, and I think it's something that both of us teach, is awareness. Just becoming aware of the limiting beliefs, becoming aware of the way that you talk to yourself, the inner critic, becoming aware of how you relate to money or people or your body. Just bringing awareness to that and shedding a light on that, it creates a space, it creates an opening for you to then apply a different choice. So if you become aware, I'm really beating myself up internally, I'm really giving myself a hard time, you can stop, you can look at it with compassion, and then you can go, what are my options here? And then you can implant positive affirmations, positive self-talk. You can make a shift, and that's where the empowerment piece comes in. So we have to be delicate with this because Western culture is very shame-based, and we can easily get into a bad situation when we go down this path.
One of the things I'm curious if it came up in your studies is the whole education around carrot and stick for kids, starting out so early in life that if you behave, you do things right, you get the reward. And if you don't, you're bad and you're undeserving. And how that starts to work out in our minds a certain path of belief system that we're not worthy, that we're not deserving, or we're not good enough from a very young age. Did you research that, or does that come up in the classes?
Yeah. That's typical polarity. So humans are oriented towards polarity. We need to have a certain amount of polarity to kind of navigate through life. Oh, that's dangerous, don't go there. Oh, that's pleasurable, go there. So that's built into our system, that polarity. And so that's what we use a lot of time to do behavior modification. We do it for ourselves, we do it for our kids, but one of the things that you learn when you study Eastern philosophy and you study different kinds of world views is that polarity is okay to a certain extent, but becoming what we call equanimous, becoming okay with how things are, whether things are looking like it might be a failure or looking like it might be a success, finding that peacefulness and that contentment, regardless of whether or not it's labeled good or bad, is where we get to a place that's much more spacious. And I talk about this a lot as it relates to business. So I wrote a blog recently about a huge business disaster that I had back in 2008. I had opened this wellness center. It was like the start of the recession. It was a catastrophe. And we put failure a lot of times in the bad camp. We're like, failure's bad. You failed and I'm a failure. And, we create this stress and trauma around failure, but really we need to approach that with the same lightheartedness and compassion and acceptance and recognize there's still value in something that's uncomfortable. There's still value in something that didn't work out the way that we expected, and extracting that and building on that is really where we get resilience and where we get our next best idea and where we tap into our creativity and everything. So I think that when we get beyond polarity to a place of, creativity and innovation, that's where we can really thrive.
And also that the place of failure is this very oftentimes motivated by other people looking in at your life rather than you being in that position of saying, this is the step that I needed to take to move towards what I wanted. This is about my personal empowerment, not other people judging me and how I'm going about my life, which is so predominant in the way of, I think, our culture, that it's what other people think about you versus how you think about you.
Yeah, I think that that's part of the process of maturing and defining what success means to you. And there's a lot of external expectations, and you have to define your own expectations, your own goals, what you're trying to achieve, what meaning that you create out of your experiences. And I think, that's one of the ways in which we support each other, like being part of a community. Like you have the Mindful Wealth community, I have the Women in Wellness community, getting together with like-minded people that can help you reframe your experiences and find the lessons in your experiences. I think that's one of the ways that we, support and celebrate each other.
Oh, definitely. And it's this helping one another reach this level of business maturity where you're able to stand on your own 2 feet and get through, those difficult experiences. Because when you put yourself out there, you do become susceptible to other people's, feedback and comments and all kinds of things that can come up that can be quite harsh if you haven't prepared yourself to be operating from this place of what I'm doing is perfectly divine for me.
Yes. I love the way how you described it as business maturity. I haven't heard it described in that way before, but that's very much what it is and what it feels like when you get out of that adolescent phase with your business and you get to a place where you know who you are, you know what your mission is, you know what you're trying to accomplish. You're surrounded by people that uplift you. That's a very great place of maturity. And I love that as a phrase.
Yeah, it came to me when you said that. I was like, wait, that's really what we're trying to do. And so much of life is reaching this place where, like you said, you're moving out of the adolescence and you're moving into this empowering place where life is a creation that it doesn't have to be looked upon as being fixed, or like a thought doesn't have to be looked upon as being the thing that you guide your life by, that it's just a thought. It's your own creation. It's temporary. It's not something you have to attach yourself to. You can look at it as almost like a piece of dust moving through the air past you. You know, it doesn't have to be something you grab out and take on as your own burden anymore. You know, it's so beautiful to be able to, I think, have a business where you're operating that way. And perhaps maybe what we find is we're helping people go from that place of, the last vestiges of adolescence into the maturity. And we can never teach somebody, right, something that we have not actually gone through. Not truly. I mean, we can tell them about it, but that this is what it looks like, but you can't help people through the steps if you haven't, I think, gone through the steps at some level your own. But that may be a belief. I'd love to know what you think about that.
Well, it's funny because that was one of the major findings of my dissertation research.
Oh, good. Okay, let's have it.
I was interviewing the women, and I chose women to interview that had been in practice for at least 10 years, which I felt was like a mastery of their practice, and that they really understood how healing works, how people heal, how to be a healer. And they all said to me, you can't take people where you haven't gone, and prepare that the journey ahead is going to have a lot of challenge, a lot of obstacle, a lot of transformation. You're going to need to go through all your own crap and come out, because you need to know the path. You need to know how to help other people go through that. And that's, the journey of being a healer. So that was something that was really important for me to hear, because I needed to know how to prepare for that going forward. And I needed to know that was going to be part of my own journey.
It's so, oh my gosh, I've just got chills all over because this is so much fun, this convergence, right, in this moment. I actually got in an interview, a podcast interview with a friend of mine, and we were sort of debating about this, because he was like, oh, you can teach people anything, and I'm like, I don't think so. We just were fighting, and it was great. And I love that we have that ability to be just totally truthful. But what I've seen is that for example, we are women, right? We don't know what it's like to grow up as a man. We know what it's like to grow up as a woman. And in our culture, there is a lot of not good enough in so many ways for women. We deal with it in our body awareness and those issues, right? We talked about weight and the struggle of judgment. We deal with judgment of people making decisions about what we look like and what kind of person we are. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on women to go one of two paths, and many take the path of I'm not good enough. We see these media figures and they're all airbrushed and they look so perfect, and we think, oh my gosh, I'm obviously not good enough. Look at that person and look at me. And there's so many reasons from a very young age that not good enough just gets in there and works its way through in our relationships and all these other places. But where I'm going with this is it's like to have gone through that journey, my own journey of not good enough to hell yeah, I'm good enough. It's not something that I feel like I could have taught to people had I not gone through that in my own unique way. And I know each person will be different, but I know what it feels like to be on one side and I know what it feels like to be on the other. And it's so beautiful to be able to inspire people to the fact that it's actually possible to come to the other side.
Right. I think it goes back to this idea of maturity that you're describing. Like, there's a difference between teaching someone a skill set and now someone has a set of skills, and then someone developing and becoming mature. I mean, you can take a teenage kid and you can say, like, these are the things you're supposed to do in a relationship. You're supposed to be kind. You're supposed to listen. And you can say this. But we all know when we interact with someone who has spent a lifetime listening and being compassionate, that just being in their presence is a teaching. And that's why we seek out teachers and masters, just to be in their presence, because just their being is a teaching. And we're in the business, you and I, we're in the business of empowerment, which is also a business of empathy. And you can't really truly empathize if you haven't gone into your own space, been there, sat in it, dealt with it, come out the other side. You can't really sit with someone else and their stuff if you haven't done that for yourself. It's going to be too uncomfortable. You're not going to feel like you're confident in that space. It's, you're going to have an aversion to that. So this is part of the maturity that we've been talking about.
And one of the things I love about what you're doing is getting out there and, networking and speaking and building these communities. And I'd love it if you could talk more about why you do that and how you do it.
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning. I started my wellness business before there really was internet. I mean, there was kind of sort of internet, but there definitely wasn't Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. I mean, I started just going door to door in my neighborhood with my massage therapy flyers, knocking on the door and being like, hi, I do massage, like a Girl Scout or something. So I come from a time, I mean, I'm only, 41, but I come from a time where you had to go out of the house to get a client, to get business. And I think that's kind of like guerrilla style or street style marketing. And that's never left me. And it's served me well because, it's important to have a presence online. I have a beautiful website. I have social media stuff happening. But I find that really having conversations with people and getting up and talking in front of people and going and supporting the things that other people are doing. I always go, to events of my, friends, competitors, collaborators. I always go out and support things that other people are doing. I feel like that creates community and it creates relationships that then become referrals, that then become business, that then help me sustain what I'm doing. So I advise all of my clients, it's great to get all your stuff set up online and get your sales funnel and your opt-in and something else. But It's equally as important to be seen and heard in the real world, interacting with people, sharing your message, saying what you do. And even if that means going door to door to get your first few clients or to build up the next level of your business, I think that it's a great strategy, and it's worked well for me for 15 years.
Wow. And so I'm in a new community and I'm thinking about, okay, I do need to get out there more. But you go to chamber events, you go to a few things and they're very superficial. So, but you're not doing that. You're doing something different. And I think you mentioned meetups earlier. And so I'd love to know, like, what would you suggest somebody does if they realize that they're a bit cloistered in their house and they're not really getting out there enough?
Lots of things. I mean, you mentioned the superficiality. I've had that experience where I've gone into an event. I'm thinking of a chamber event that I went to earlier this week, where I was having a conversation with a woman. She was like an interior designer. And the conversation started out very superficially, and she was telling me about these design tours that she does. And I was listening so deeply and staring into her eyes and being so present with her that the conversation quickly shifted to the fact that her son was schizophrenic and has been mentally ill for 12 years, and that she's been researching all this stuff to help to save him, and that what she really wants to be doing is teaching people about mental illness and how to take care of your mind. And that only happened because I was so present with her and I let her get through the kind of layer of, I'm at a networking event and this is what I'm doing, and drop into a place that was much more sacred for her. And so I think that your presence and your the way you interact with people when you meet them a lot of times will influence the kind of connection that you have and the kind of interaction that you have. So that's like just first and foremost. I don't change my behavior or act more superficial if I'm at an event that other people are acting that way. I stay myself in that situation. And the other thing that I do is if I'm in a place where I really need to ramp up my business, I need to get a lot more clients or I need to get a lot more visibility, I go to everything. I go to lunch and learns, I go to chamber things, I go to yoga classes or, running groups. I mean, I just go to everything and I talk to anybody that will talk to me. And eventually I'll find the one or two or three things that are the best fit for me, but I don't really know that until I try. And a perfect example of this for me is 6 months ago, I started taking comedy improv classes. It was not something that I really planned. I was just looking one day for how can I meet people that I wouldn't otherwise meet? I saw this, flyer for an improv and I'm like, I'm going to go take this improv class, thinking that I was going to go for the 7 weeks and never go back. And now it's 6 months later. And the way that this has influenced my life is beyond what I ever could have anticipated. I've been writing about it. I've been teaching about the relationship between improv and entrepreneurship. I've been performing. It's just opened up a whole new thing for me that I couldn't access 6 months ago. So the other thing that I always encourage people to do is do things that are weird and out of your comfort zone. It will connect to your business. It will connect to your personal growth and your empowerment if you're open to it and you just allow yourself to have a new experience and try something different.
Wow, this is really fun. I love the comedy improv. The meetups. Well, you mentioned that earlier, and I haven't gone to a meetup, and maybe other people haven't. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's meetups as in meetups.com. So meetups.com is a website you can scroll through and there's thousands of free meetups that you can attend in all kinds of categories, from a hiking group to a business networking group. I mean, there's just the whole gamut of all different kind of groups, and you can just show up, and most of them are free, if not all of them. Some of them will suggest a donation or something. But that's a great way to just see what's happening in your community. Put in your zip code. You'll get a list of 100 meetups that are happening, and you can start going around to them. Another thing that I always do is I scroll through the event calendar on Facebook. You can also say events near me in the event section on Facebook, and that'll give you at least 2 or 3 things that are happening every day in your neighborhood neighborhood that you can go to. That's a great resource. Eventbrite is a great resource. So you can also go to Eventbrite, put in your city or put in your zip code, and that'll give you a list of everything that's happening in your area. And you can sort by categories if you just want to sort under networking or you want to search under health and wellness. You can find things that way. So I'll go through a lot of these different sites and I'll compile for the week all the different things that I'm going to go check out. And then I just go from there. You know, I find the communities and the people that really resonate with me and commit to them. I feel like, you know, you don't want to be a window shopper for too long. At some point, you really want to commit to some of the groups and develop those deeper bonds. Because that's really going to serve your business the best in the long run.
Really cool. And one of the things that's coming up, and I'm just curious, would you consider yourself to be more extroverted, more introverted?
I'm very comfortable, in public. I'm very comfortable with public speaking and performing and meeting people. But there's this part of me that's very shy. So I hold back a little bit when it comes to being really vulnerable in those settings. So I think it's kind of a blend of the two. I'm both private and public. I can perform really easily, but I can also be really shy.
That's beautiful. I love that you shared that because I think sometimes people, with what you've shared about the networking, maybe people automatically think, oh, well, she's different than I am. And what you just shared is probably resonating with a lot of people that, oh, actually, she's very similar to me. And if she's doing that, then I can do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I have the Dr. Gabby persona, right? So, you know, to my friends and family, like I'm Gabrielle and that's like, you know, the girl at home in sweatpants, petting the cat and, you know, watching Netflix. So there's like that version of me. And that's the version of me that if you and I were hanging out, we would probably have a conversation that's a bit more vulnerable where I may be talking about my family or my fears or something. But the Dr. Gabby persona is something that I wear when I have to give a talk, you know, or a presentation. I become, you know, my PhD and my life experience and my work experience, and I try to impart whatever lessons I've learned, you know, to the people that are there to receive them. And that's, you know, that's a different me. And I think it's fine to compartmentalize those. You don't have to feel like, you need to be all things in all scenarios. It's fine to find that part of you that has expertise, that has life experience, and show up as that version of yourself if you have to give a talk or do some networking. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Well, one of the questions I like to ask at the end of the conversation is this question about mindful wealth and what that means to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much. I mean, mindfulness in general means paying attention to me. We use it in the context of health and wellness, like paying attention to the food that you're eating, paying attention to the breath coming in and out of your body, paying attention to the sounds around you right now or what you're sitting or standing on. So mindfulness to me means being really present. And, you know, wealth to me means abundance. It means feeling like you are enough, feeling like you have enough, feeling like, you know, that sense of contentment and just having so much gratitude and so much to give that it's flowing out of you. So when I feel most mindfully wealthy, it's when I'm giving the most and I'm creating the most value for people and I'm the most present in my life. I'm not thinking about things I did wrong in the past. I'm not thinking about what's coming in the future and worrying how it's going to turn out. I'm really just present and I'm full with a sense of contentment, value, joy, and feeling like I have enough. What I'm doing is enough and I have enough and I have plenty to share with others.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us and sharing your wisdom. It's really powerful. I know that this is going to touch others' lives. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love being here and I love talking with you.
And tell everyone all the ways that they can find out more about you, learn about what you're doing with your group and community.
Yeah, of course. I have a community called Women in Wellness. It's for anyone who's working in health and wellness, and that could mean yoga teachers, acupuncturists, massage therapists, MLM folks. All of those women are in my community, and we do live video conference calls every week, and we have a private discussion forum. You can find all of that at women-in-wellness.com or just under my name, gabriellepalici.com. And I also do one-on-one stuff with folks who want to go a little bit deeper and get more clarity about their vision, their mission, their strategy. And you can find me everywhere on social media. But I want to let everybody know I do free discovery sessions. So if you're listening to this and you want to have a 20-minute conversation, that's an open door policy. We can have a conversation about whatever you want to discuss for 20 minutes. I'm happy to connect. I love to talk to people and learn about what they're doing. So that's always available to the community.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to connect this way, and keep up the good work.
Thanks so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks.